Hey guys, and welcome to the October vlog. It is very late in October, but I just put it out and you will see the clips preceding this. I don't know if I'm going to put them in before or after, but I had a really nice day and I did feel, I don't know if you can see in the video me in the park, it was me just walking back home about like half an hour ago. The rain was just getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. Oh my god, everything I was wearing was soaked. Like, thank god I had my raincoat, so actually the top part was fine, but like I had my sleeves out of my raincoat, so they were soaked. My jeans, I was just soaked, but I had a very lovely day. So what you'll see in the clips, whether they're before or after, is I went to another Black History Month exhibition. I have filmed a clip where I've gone to a Black History Month exhibition, but that was earlier in the month, and that was on at a different venue. This one was on at a library in the West End of Glasgow, so I went to that, and then we just had a little wander around the park, and then went for something to eat. I'm trying to think what I actually put in the clips though. Oh, went to that book fair that's on at the Botanic in Glasgow, which is only on once a month. I thought it was on every single weekend, so I was with my friend and I was just like, oh yeah, after the exhibition we can go to that. I didn't know it was on once a month, so luckily for us it was on, because then he started speaking to them and asking. They were like, yeah, we're here every month, and I was just like, oh, thank god we came at the right time. And then we had something to eat, and then we went to a Mexican deli, I suppose, for everything that you want regarding kind of Mexican food, or rather I guess everything else as well. So that was a very nice day. But I wanted to check in about some books. I think I'm just thoroughly enjoying reading a little. Oh, so at the book fair thing, I didn't buy anything because, listen, you can't see it. Now you can see it. That is a stack of unread books, and I have more in my bedroom. And at this point, I'm just fed up with the amount of unread books. Like, they don't weigh on me heavily, but I just I can't keep buying any more books. Like, what's the point? Like, this consumerism will kill me. Like, and it's not even like I'm a heavy book buyer or anything like that, so I don't know how other people do it. But at this point I'm just like, I'm just fed up. I don't need to buy any new books, especially because like the majority of my books this year have come from the library, so I'm just like, listen, I don't need to buy them. What I like that book fair for though is getting like the older copies of the Agatha Christie novels, because some of them just have really like nice covers or pictures that they've used, so that's what I usually kind of buy from there. But I didn't buy anything this time, like nothing really caught my eye, and I was like, fine. There was the 5 Little Pigs, but I don't actually really like that story. I know, like, I don't hate it or anything like that, I just don't love it as much as everyone else, and I know everyone's like, oh my god, 5 Little Pigs, I love it. I'm just like, okay. So I'm reading this poetry collection. These Are the Words by Nikita Gill. Now, I forgot to mention in my, I think, August vlog, I met Nikita, so I'm going to put the pictures here of when I met her, because I did a poetry workshop that she was running, and it was so good. Like, I think it was an hour and a half, and honestly, like, I thought maybe she would talk a little bit about herself and then read some of her poetry, and we did a little bit of poetry writing. That was it. No, the whole workshop was go. She would talk about something and be like, and based on that, write this, and you're like, duh. It was so good. And like, we met this other girl there who joined our table, and it was just beautiful. And this is not me lying at all. Nikita said to us at the end, like, you guys were my favorite table. It's just so nice. I actually have, let me get it. So this is my copy of Wild Embers by Nikita Gill. Like, I honestly, like, this is one of my favorite poetry collections. Like, I love it so much, and I forgot that I had this with me. In my head, I thought it was still in London, so I didn't even think to bring it. But at the end, she was doing a signing, so this one is signed by her. Isn't that awesome? But I would have loved to have had this signed by her, because I do love this and I've read it a couple of times. So yeah, reading this, and at first when I was reading it, I was like, this just sounds like, you know, really young. And then when I went to put it in my kind of Goodreads story graph, I saw that it's published by Macmillan Children, so that explains why. It's still really nice, and actually I'm reading it and I'm like, I wish I had this when I was a teenager. It would have been absolutely lovely. So enjoying that at the moment. I'm also reading this, which is a short story collection. This is published by Influx Press, and the copy that I have is a advanced reader's copy. And basically a couple of months ago I read like a short story collection which was kind of, I want to say, around the same sort of themes, but it says here that it's a genre-bending debut collection merging horror, fairy tales, pop culture and science fiction. Women challenge the boundaries placed on their bodies while living in a world among animals where violence is intertwined with bizarre ecological disruptions. So the one that I read before was a lot to do with kind of science fiction and women and the body. So when I heard this, I was like, oh, this sounds like it will be like that, and I really enjoyed that with the collection, so I wanted to read this. I'm not too far into this one, I'm in 61 pages in, but I think I've read about 3 stories so far, and I have liked them. I'm waiting for a bit more of the ones that I feel like have a bit more, I don't know, sustenance to them, but so far I am enjoying it, and I think this will be my 3rd short story collection of the year after probably like 2 or 3 years of not reading short story collections at all. And then for my non-fiction, I'm actually reading this, A Pebble on the Throat. This was longlisted for the Gillette Prize, so I am still making my way through the books. I think this is actually the final one that I have to read from the books that I wanted to read from the prize. I am nearly done with this one because I'm on page 308. I think it's like 352 pages or something like that. I'm enjoying it so far. This is told from 2 perspectives, so it's told from the perspective of Asma and then her mum as well. So parts of this are set in Glasgow, parts of this are set in Pakistan, and parts of it is set in, I guess, one of the towns near Glasgow. The first one I was reading, I forgot that it was from 2 perspectives, because it doesn't make that clear. It's only when the dates change, and I don't really pay attention to that because when I say anything to do with numbers, my brain just goes whoop. So I was a bit like, what's going on? Like, how is this woman experiencing so much life? And then I realised that I had read the blurb and that's what it says. I am really enjoying this because it's just her personal account of life, the daughter, when she moved to Glasgow, not when she moved, when she was born in Glasgow, obviously, and what life was like for her in school. One thing I read these books, you can probably hear the rain, but I read these books and it's, when I hear children recounting their time at school and like how horrible children were, right? I am not in any way downplaying that. I think that's horrible. Like, I was never bullied because I don't know what that experience is like. But what really gets me is the comments from the teachers. And I'm just like, you big adults, like, why are you just making these stupid comments? Or why are you causing situations in which children, you know, you can see these horrible bullies are just going to use it as an avenue to bully other kids? In some ways it doesn't surprise me because I remember being at school and just thinking some of the teachers were just like, I don't want to be mean, but just I was just like, what's wrong? And now being an adult, I'm even more just like concerned about just how they approach life, because I'm just like, I just don't think you treat teenagers like that, you know? Like, I just don't know what's wrong with them. So yeah, when I read books like this, it actually makes me angry at teachers who kind of just leave space or just kind of add fuel to the fire, sorry, for these situations to be even worse. I don't understand it. But yeah, I'm really liking the account of just like the different lives and things like that. And Asma's perspective is very much about being different, being brought up in a place where there are so many white faces and she's bullied for, you know, her being herself, for being brown, for having a different type of hair, for, you know, the different foods that her parents cook, all the stuff that, you know, that comes with when you are not born in this country and kids just want to bully you for. So that is particularly sad to see. And then her mum's section is very much dealing with, like, you know, moving away from her family in Pakistan and coming to Glasgow or coming to Scotland, and differences for her and what that was like. And it's really interesting when they talk about kind of, I guess, like experiences of racism, because I feel like her mum's experiences are very much like kind of like, she's like, oh, this woman didn't like me, and I didn't know why, or like then they just like brush it off. Whereas I feel like with Asma's experience, because it's so in your face, she's in school, she cannot escape the brutality and it's constant day by day. It's just such a different experience to what like her mum or what her dad might have experienced. Not to say that they weren't, you know, bad, because the dad's one, in the case, he owned a petrol station, and it did seem like, you know, people were very taken aback that an Asian man owned the petrol station and that he was the boss there. So that's really interesting to see. So yeah, that's what I'm reading so far. I have finished a couple of other books, but I will probably talk about them in my wrap up. But yeah, that's me so far. So now I'm just gonna, I don't know, I need to get some food and then it's relaxation for the rest of the evening. Hey guys, and welcome to the end of the October vlog. I thought I would talk you through the books that I read during the month of October, because I started the vlog quite late into the month, so I didn't really get a chance to speak about any of the books I read in the beginning of the year, the beginning of the month. But again, we're just gonna do a little Storygraph wrap up. To be honest, putting in all the like things that come with a Storygraph, you know, app or website, just means when I'm editing, I'm like, why did I decide to do that? So what I'm gonna put here is the, you know, the wrap up that shows you the books in total that graphic, and then some of the stats from that, but I won't go through every single one in terms of like, I think sometimes I show like genre, fiction, non-fiction, like all of that. It's not that important. For the month of October I read 7 books, which I'm so happy about because I just feel like I'm back into the swing of my like reading level that I like to be at, especially because in the beginning of October I read 2 very lengthy books, so I feel like not only did I manage 7, but one of them was long. 2 of them were quite long, but one of them was split between September and October. So at the beginning of the month I finished finally reading The Relentless Moon, which is number 3 in the Lady Astronaut series. I've been calling it a trilogy, but that's only because so far there are 3 books in it, but I don't know if it is actually just going to be a series. I hope if it's going to be a series that she does not keep increasing the page count, because the first one was about 300 pages, then the other one was 500. This was 687 pages. And I just feel like it took a long time to get to resolve. I gave this 3 stars because I did enjoy it. I just felt like we took so long to get to the crux of the story. And we're actually, so in the first 2 books we are following, I believe it's Elmer York. In this third one we actually have, our perspective is completely different. It's from a different character, and I understand why she's done it, because these people are going to the moon, and the other expedition was to somewhere else. And I think to actually talk about kind of what happens in this would ruin it, because it is about sabotage. And you know, for someone who likes detective mysteries, I was like, oh, once I kind of got on board with that, I was like, oh, this could be quite interesting. I just found that it was just quite long, and I was just a bit like, okay, and just all different things kept happening at different times, and it just ended up being really repetitive. But I think she had to do that in order to build the tension, for one, because you know these people are stuck on a small spacecraft for a bit, and then they're, you know, they're on the moon, and then so many things are happening, so she really had to like build the tension. And I guess she also had to really account for the span of time that they were there, and really show us like how long this has been going on for. So I appreciate why she did it. I after a while I was like, my interest was waning, and that's just a personal thing. So I think I might read the 4th one if there ever is a 4th one, but I wouldn't run to read it. And then the other book that I read is Butter. I have been waiting for so long for this to come through in the library, and I will say, like, I just don't think it was worth it. But I think sometimes that's the problem with, if you kind of lean into the hype of books, you're always gonna be working off the hype that you've seen from other people. It's like huge marketing campaign and things like that, so then you really just have to like judge it for yourself once you read it and be like, how much do I like this, just like if I picked it up and thought this sounded interesting, versus like, oh okay, everyone hyped it up and I thought it was going to be really good, but now I don't think that much of it. What I did like about this book is it's the food writing in it. Absolutely loved it, and I think it's so nice because obviously this is a translation, so I think it's even nicer that it was captured, like you're still capturing the kind of essence of, I guess, the original author's writing, right, and translating that into English with the kind of creative writing artistic technique. So I really appreciated that, and I think this had a lot to say kind of about society, women's place in society, women's bodies, women when they enter a relationship and what's expected of them, and so many other things to like do with men. I think it had great commentary on that, and I think none of it felt like stuffed in. It felt all very like, it all felt very organic to the story. I think I came away with it because the main focus of this story is, I cannot remember any of the characters' name, I'm not gonna lie. The 2 characters as well, like the character we hear the most from, she has a very similar name to her friend, so that also, I was just a bit like, who? Sometimes I'm like, who are we talking about? But then as the story went on, obviously I got into it. But it's the main focus of like, there's one character who is a journalist, and she ends up writing to this woman who is in prison, and she has been in prison because they say that she killed like 2 of her lovers, but they cannot, there's no really like direct proof of it, but she's in prison anyway, and she is appealing it. And this journalist starts writing to her, first ask her for a recipe, and then they end up like meeting and talking, and the woman who's in prison very much, you know, is this fat Japanese woman, and you know, there's a lot of talk of like, how can these men find her attractive, like blah blah blah, because she's a fat, but you know, she just loves food. She has a real connection to pleasure, senses, desire, all things just kind of sensual and rich, and just really allows herself to, you know, eat the foods that she wants and just enjoy a life that is different to the norm. And so from this we get like these wonderful food descriptions. She tells her about like this butter miso rice recipe, which, so funny, like a couple of days before reading this book, I don't eat a lot of rice, because I feel like it's something I had so much in my childhood that I'm just like, oh, I cannot eat another rice dish ever. But I don't know why I'd made rice for something, and I've always thought like butter on rice is like just one of the nicest things, like freshly cooked rice. So I remember just like putting some butter on it and just like eating the rice like that before I, ate what I was actually eating the rice for. And then a couple of days later, I read this book and the woman talks about it, and I'm like, yes, it's so true. I've never tried it with soy sauce, so I'm definitely going to try it with soy sauce. But yeah, overall, I just found that this book was okay. It had, obviously a bit of like a mystery element to it, because the focus is kind of, did this woman actually commit the crime? And the journalist is really, I guess, also trying to find that out as well. But along the way, she just gets caught up in the allure of this woman, and then obviously what that means for her as she starts kind of eating more and actually filling out the reactions from people around her about, taking care of herself and is she okay and things like that. So it touches on a lot of things, and I think it does it well. For me, I know I wouldn't have picked this book up myself if people hadn't been talking about it all the time. So I'm just a bit like, yeah, it's not the kind of like, there's nothing wrong with it. I just didn't think it was that interesting. So I'm like, oh, what are other people seeing in it that I'm not? But I'm also not too worried about that. Another book that I finished reading was The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy. So this is part of her Living autobiography series. So this is number 2. I'm struggling to remember if I spoke about this in the previous clips. I don't think I did, but I enjoyed it. I've not read the other 2. I have since got them or acquired them, so I do have them to read. But this was just like a really nice account of just like a period in her life where she split from the father of her kids, so then her and her daughters move into a new place where she's kind of renting her friend's shed out or using it as a kind of writing spot, and then kind of also a period of dealing with grief when her mother passes. And she's just talking about just kind of like general life, but then other things that inspire her or other memories that she has. And it was just nice. I don't know much about the author, and the only fiction book I've read by her is Hot Milk, and I didn't even enjoy it. But yeah, I think the cover just caught my eye, and maybe I've seen something somewhere about the book. So I was like, I'll give it a go. So I did enjoy it. I thought it was a very pleasant read, and yeah, I gave this 3 stars. Poetry collection I finally finished is With Love, Grief and Fury, and I just love the title. And this is by Selena Godin. I feel like I've read something else by her, but I just cannot be sure. I really enjoyed this collection. It took me forever to finish it though. Like, I feel like I started it months and months ago. Again, another 3 star. I like how varied her poetry is. There is some that is just, really short form, but then some of it is prose. And I just love the different things that she writes about, and I love that she just speaks like directly what's inside her. Like, not everything is very like heavily like put together with metaphors. Some of it is just directly what she's thinking, and there's no kind of like cleverness about her or anything like that, but you can still relate in so many ways. And she talks a lot about Camden as well, and as someone who grew up in Camden, I'm like, oh, that's cool. We're from like different time periods in Camden. That makes it sound like she's from the Victorian era. Obviously not, but it was just nice to see kind of her talk about about it and her experiences. An audiobook that I finished is How Was It For You? Stories from a Sex Worker. So I went to a sex positive reading club thing the end of October or September, and we had to read just like a small chapter from this book, and then I liked it so much that I was like, I'm going to carry on like listening to it. And I ended up giving this 3 stars, and it probably is, yeah, no, it is a 3 stars. I enjoyed all the things like this woman like brought up in the book, and she tells her story from like how she got into sex work, and then just about like the wider industry and just people being absolute wankers, like, it's really sad to see how kind of organisations or institutions like just think they know better than the women that are kind of delivering the sex work, that are working in this industry. And yeah, all of those things were shocking, all of those things weren't nice, and they're just, there's none of that I'm kind of like have any issue with. My thing about this book is, as it goes on, you just really feel like she's just not being nice. And by this I don't mean about not being nice about to society or about society in terms of like what she thinks about them. I think that's some of her thoughts are very valid in the way that we know people have treated her, but I just mean some of the thoughts she kind of had around like the other people she worked with, so the other women she worked with, and one of her friends, when in the book she's pregnant, so she's discussing her pregnancy interchangeably throughout the book. And just one of the chapters, she's speaking about one of her friends, and I was just like, this just sounds like a personal vendetta. Like, I don't know that this needed to be in the book. And I think what really got me about this is these books go through like a legal read, and she speaks about the fact that obviously things have been changed, names have been changed, and some things are just like way too detailed and specific that she couldn't put them in the book. A lot of the stuff in the book was so specific that I was just like, if someone wanted to, I'm sure they could like find out who you were. But then I just kind of think, your friend might recognize themselves in this, and I just think it's a really horrible thing to have written down. So yeah, there was just parts where she just sounded really bitter, and it was just more about personal stuff rather than like anything widely, and it really did take away from some of the bits in the book. And some of the reviews, people do say like she just is quite judgy, and I think, yeah, I think it's fair, the stuff that she has about the industry, but I think some of the stuff that's about people is I was just like, oh, I don't know, it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth.